Welcome to the Global Connection at Tel Aviv University podcast. Journey with us as we discover how TAU's academic community and friends are engaging with and helping to shape this ever-changing world.
Hi everyone, I'm Ben Bright. I'm a master's student at Tel Aviv University and one of the founding members of a task force made up of international students who are trying to share the truth through social media of what we've been experiencing, hearing, and seeing in Israel since October 7th. I'm very excited to welcome in the studio here with me today Dr. Carmel Weizman, who is a digital culture researcher from the Faculty of Humanities here at Tel Aviv University. Dr. Weizman is the publisher of the book Hebrew Online, and her work has also been published in journals such as Theory and Criticism Discourse, Context and Media, Visual Communication, and the Journal of Posthuman Studies. She is also no stranger to podcasting and has hosted a podcast on the posthuman condition. Given Dr. Weizman's expertise in contemporary media and digital culture, I thought she'd be a great person to talk with about the role that social media is playing today in swaying people's opinions globally about October 7th and the Israel-Hamas war. We're seeing a ton of disinformation and misinformation online. It's frankly scary, and I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before. So Dr. Weizman, welcome. I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective on this phenomenon and the meaning behind what we're seeing on social media these days. So let's jump right into it.
Hi.
Super happy to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into this field, and why?
So I actually got into this field very early in Israel and in the world in general. I started surfing in 1993 as a freshman in Hebrew University. And it was only for students at the time. And so I started seeing that there was one or two courses that were talking about this new kind of medium and giving you homework to log chats online and stuff like this. So this really threw me to a different direction. I was an anthropology student, and I became an anthropologist of the internet from very early on.
So you've seen the evolvement from, the very basic web to what we're seeing today, which is, VR headsets, AI headsets, or AR headsets, and everything of the likes. What are you seeing online since, the Hamas massacres of October 7th? Because I know what I'm seeing is actually quite scary and appalling. From your perspective, what's going on?
First of all, we're seeing everything, but it depends what kind of echo chamber you are at, right? Everything is accessible, and that's the thing. I think that's one of the paradoxes of social media, that you have all the things there that are unfiltered. When you look at other types of news, they filter things for you according to where you are, and they have a perspective. They, they give you a certain narrative with it. And on social media, you have everything without narrative. If you know how to search for it, it's completely unfiltered, and you have to build your own narratives. But if you're part of a certain echo chamber, you're still getting a certain narrative, but it's not ordered in the way that it is in mass media. You're just getting a lot of information that has similar narrative, and it builds up, it accumulates for you.
What I'm seeing, for example, if I take Twitter, or X, I should say, former Twitter, as an example, I'm seeing, really two polar opposites. You can have one video, for example, and we'll take a video in which the IDF finds a tunnel underneath, for example, Al-Shifa Hospital, and you have one echo chamber, as you said, that will be so indiscriminately one side, and another echo chamber that is so indiscriminately another side. Where is the middle ground? Where is the truth, and where does it lie in this era of, information and mass information?
Isn't that the million-dollar question? Where is the truth? And I'd ask an earlier question: is there such a thing as a truth? Right? I mean, we say that we live in the post-truth era, and it means that each and every narrative has, relatively a similar place, a similar importance. It depends who chooses to believe in that narrative. And we try to say not truth, but maybe facts, right? But still facts can be interpreted in different ways. And we see that. There is a certain fact, and when nobody could challenge the fact, for example, that a rocket fell on in the Shifa hospital garage. That's a fact. But now we start saying, we start looking at the facts and we start saying, no, it's them, it's us, it's the other one. You still have interpretations of the fact and different narratives. So I think that facts are no longer a factor here in trying to find the truth.
See, I would counter that and say, the reality is yes, there's interpretation, and yes, there's different perspectives, and each is entitled to their own perspective, but they're not entitled to their own fact. And that being said, in the Al-Shifa hospital parking lot, the misfired rocket situation, the fact of the matter is that was not fired by Israel, but all these news outlets, these prominent world-class news outlets, ran with the story without verifying the facts, and that segues into a great point. What and where does there become responsibility and accountability when you're feeding your respective echo chamber?
There's another level to this problem, that even if you find the right interpretation, a truer interpretation of the fact, it still doesn't bother a lot of people who want to believe in what they want to believe. They don't care. They would they would ignore this fact. They would build it elsehow into their narrative. They could even say that this entire footage is fake, because everything is possible today. So even we're at this point where even a fact has different interpretations, and even if it's a fact with one interpretation, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't shatter the narrative. The narrative is no longer built on facts anymore. People have a story. They fight with it. They live by it. Don't bother me with the facts.
Very, very, very true. Very, very true. And I see it. I'm active on, like I said, on X, and with what we're doing at the task force with the Israel war story. It's incredible. I want to say incredible, but maybe what you're suggesting is that it's the narrative. The fact doesn't matter anymore. How does digital culture influence the spread and impact of information during conflicts, particularly, this war, the Israel-Hamas war?
It depends on which platform we're talking about, because we know, for example, that the algorithms and the policy, right, of X or TikTok are completely different on that respect. And for example, maybe let's talk about TikTok, which is very relevant right now, that we're seeing that the algorithm of TikTok somehow highlights all those narratives that just are more extreme, and they're more of the same, trying to get attention and very dramatic. And it doesn't matter, what the content of the story is. And a lot of people, I don't even know if they know where Gaza or Israel is, or if they know anything about what's going on here, or if they believe even in what they're saying. But it's part of this social media culture in which we're getting attention, we're getting likes, we're getting monetized just by, crying on camera, or, saying, oh, those poor kids, or, or, wow, Bin Laden, he made so much sense.
Absolutely absurd.
And it's just, I think that, it's another level of the problem. It's not even, we said that the facts have different interpretations. Facts don't matter. And even worse, the narrative even doesn't matter. If this narrative gets you attention and gets you money, you will talk about it, even if you don't know anything about it and you don't believe it. And you see those hundreds of TikToks of people saying, well, I'm not an expert on this, but, and then they will tell you something completely crazy,
It's
listen to me, I don't know anything, but.
Yeah, it's actually incredible. You make a good point. It's incredible how, since this war has broken out, everybody I see online is an expert in Middle Eastern affairs. Everybody all of a sudden is, a pro-Palestinian. Or pro-Israeli. It's incredible. Where were they before October 7th?
It's the trend now.
Yeah.
And people want to hop on the trend. Whichever side, I think they would choose even, whichever side gets you more attention, likes, hashtags that are more successful. And this is where the platform comes in, because some people argued that TikTok, because of being Chinese, is actually tweaking the algorithm this way to prime more the hashtags that are related to Free Palestine than Stand With Israel, for example.
I was going to ask you, yeah, what do you think about, government interference, specifically, TikTok, or on the flip side, for example, on Instagram, a lot of, pro-Israel content is being suppressed, which ultimately means that there's not a fair balance of, content distribution. Do you feel that these platforms must be held accountable, since at the end of the day, it's shaping, the minds of young people, or on the flip side, it's suppressing one echo chamber.
Yeah, I think I don't know if they're doing that. I mean, it's their trade secrets. We don't really know what they're doing, and we haven't been able to make them accountable for
It's
anything until now. So I wouldn't trust. I want to hold my breath on that. But I think that both sides, if there are two sides here and not more, but all sides are trying to use different tricks in order to prime their content and suppress the other's content. So you have all those advices that are circulating on social media. Like if you see a pro-Palestinian post, don't comment on it and don't like it, just report it. Because even if you comment on it something, in order to say something against it, you're still increasing their traffic. So it's a different logic than the logic that we use for argumentation. That I want to hear your argument and I want to argue back and we're going to have a rational argument here. So there's a different logic that, I don't want to give you this stage. And so I would report you in order to create, for the algorithm, a reason to suppress you. And even if I have something to say, even if I know a truth and I can counter it and I can influence you as a person, we don't think about persons anymore. It's not about people.
No.
It's about what kind of content would be primed. So I wouldn't put the emphasis here on the platforms. I would say even us, the people, are thinking through this kind of platform logic, and we're not thinking anymore about convincing other people. Just about the massive information. How do we shape it in order to suppress or prime something?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I was in London a couple weeks ago and I heard Dror Globerman speak, and one of his points was exactly that: is in fact, don't engage. Even if you want to tell people something is misinformation or disinformation, you're better off not touching the post because the algorithm will read that it's an important post. So that's a very good point. Now, I just want to bring the conversation somewhere else for a second. I know you're an expert in this, and I'd love if you can share with the viewers what are post-humanist perspectives.
I'll try to do this as short as possible. There are two main threads of post-humanism. And they are quite opposite to each other. This is part of the story of post-humanism, that, in the same discourse, it doesn't have the same narrative. It's postmodern, so you can imagine. So one of them, and I think the simplest to understand, is actually talking about how we can take technology and science and upgrade ourselves with it. So we can be beyond human, because human is not enough. Nature hasn't done us a favor. It didn't take us as far as we need. And in a world without God, it's an atheistic perspective. We have to take our fate into our own hands, and with the tools that we have built, to try to make something more of ourselves. So, upload our consciousness, upgrade our bodies, every way we can use technology and science to enhance and radical life extension, blah, blah, blah. That's one thread of post-humanism.
That's an exciting thread. That sounds like we're going to be, microchipping ourselves and.
I don't know if it's exciting, but it's one way. It's one way out.
Of evolution. For
it's
sure.
One way out.
Out.
Yeah. If it even takes us out, if we can really cure the human problem this way, even if it's really a problem. And the other post-humanism, which is more referred to as critical post-humanism, actually thinks that the problem that we have is that humanity is thinking of itself this way. We're the prime customers here. We're above nature. We should take ourselves above nature. That's exactly the problem. We should actually cycle back to being more in harmony with other creatures, with nature. And for that, we actually have to decrease. Perhaps it's less technology or different sustainable technology, or taking the human out of the center of the world and then looking at all the knowledge from a different perspective. Maybe this is how we got to this point. So it's two different definitions of the problem of the human and what you're supposed to do about it.
And how do these two different perspectives help us understand, media discourse, especially during this time, in a war, and in a war that is, very convoluted. I mean, I would say that it's not so convoluted, but when you, take to the platforms, as we've discussed, it becomes very convoluted. How do these two perspectives fit in to shaping that?
Well, I think the social media is already part of a post-human world by the fact that we live it as a world. We live in an augmented world already. You're not living anymore just your natural, geographical, physical, embodied reality. You're living this augmented reality in which our life online is not just a representation or fun or entertainment. It's real life. It's real life. It matters. People get hurt there. Although they don't hurt your body, words can kill as well. And things that happen online have actual consequences. And it doesn't longer make sense to separate even between the online and offline.
It's an extension. It's an extension to who we are.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's very much blended. So this is already a post-human feature. It's like we enhanced ourselves with technology, and you can already see that this enhancement is not so fun, right? I mean, a minute ago you say, wow, that sounds exciting. But you see that when you enhance your reality, it could also be overwhelming and it could have negative aspects. So I'm not sure this even attests to the problem of enhancing your reality. So there is this paradox that whatever we live there is real enough. You get the raw reality sometimes, as the people who on the 7th of October have spent time in Telegram and saw the raw footage of Hamas in real time. If you want to get the reality unfiltered, it's there for you.
I unfortunately made the mistake of looking at it all, and you can't unsee it.
Exactly. So you have this truth, raw truth, in a world that you no longer know what the truth is. Then you want to stick to it, to this raw footage that people is doing, not just the Hamas, even the survivors that have taken footage of themselves while running, while hiding. This is one way in which you deal with this trauma and you tell yourselves and you show others, this is real. This is happening to me right now. This is real time. This is one way for us to try to grasp at reality when you no longer have a sense of reality in your physical reality. But on the other end, at the same time, you look at those things and some of it is fake. And you don't know anymore what's AI made, what is fake and what is real. And this is our paradox. We look at it in order to get a sense of the real, to try to get at the raw, but we also don't believe what we're seeing. So we live in this paradox in which it's very disorienting. It's a bit traumatic even, because your access to the truth is also the place where you don't trust it. It's so true, and maybe it's not true at all.
I think we're at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to where we're going. When it comes to this mass information, what I mean is that right now we're still in what I'd like to call Web 2. The known internet, but we are moving into a phase of Web 3, which includes the Metaverse, even further artificial intelligence and augmented reality headsets. Is there going to be a time in which we have just lost complete command and it becomes a free-for-all? What is your outlook? Because I can foresee a world, if we don't take control of this information or the mass information deployment, that you put on a headset and whatever you want your reality to be, it will be. And how do we grapple with that? And then the world in which the graphic things we saw of October 7th becoming that extension to people's everyday lives if they wish it to be.
I think we always advance backwards and forward at the same time. You have those two poles in which we try to get life to be more virtual. We run into the virtual. We want more metaverse, more customization, more only what I want to see and not what everything is going outside. But at the same time, you want the raw, you want the real, and you want access to it wherever you are. So it happens at the same time. And I think that what it creates is that a colleague of mine is doing actually a really interesting research, Nia Ehrlich. She wrote about how photography no longer has a connection to reality. We used to trust photography as an evidence. This cycles back to the beginning of our conversation. Like, look, this is a photograph, this is a video of what actually happened. But we don't believe photography anymore as a true representation of reality. We know photography is constructed, and today photography could be indeed constructed perfectly by AI and fakes and whatever. And so when we don't trust a distant reality anymore, I think that what will happen is that we will want to trust only what we have witnessed personally, only what I sensed with my senses or was told to me by someone that I trust, that they have actually experienced it firsthand. Otherwise, nothing would be true anymore. And in terms of science, I think it's taking us back to the days of pre-science, we know, empiricism. You know, just the things that I could sense with my own senses, I know them to be true. We're going to have a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of different narratives. It's going to be even harder to know what's true when people run from the truth this way and stop trusting the means in which we conceived truth until now. Because you understand that you cannot trust anything that you see from afar. And when you look at flat earthers, for example, this is part of the things they're saying. You know, I'm looking at a distance and I'm seeing that the earth is flat. This must be true. And everything else that is told to me, I haven't experienced this directly. This is what matters, right? I think this kind of thinking is going to be more prominent because it's very hard to know what's truth. And you don't know who to trust. And even the trustworthy institutions fall for misinformation and disinformation or bad narratives. So what you're going to do? Who are you going to trust? Just your senses.
It seems like we're coming to the beginning of the end when it comes to, you know, the typical mainstream media and some of these platforms. If that's the case, I have to see it to believe it, or, you know, hear it directly from the top of the grapevine. It's very interesting. As a digital anthropologist, what are some of the insights you could provide about the communication patterns that you've observed and seen during this war, you know, and since October 7th?
One of the things I've been thinking most about is about these kinds of raw footage that comes from survivors in real time. And there's been, I mean, this entire month, we're seeing more and more of this footage coming out, or some of the WhatsApps that are, you know, from the last minute, what people were doing. And it made me think, it made me wonder, you know, I don't know if you're young. So I don't know if you take it for granted, or do you realize how bizarre it is when somebody is in grave danger for their lives and they still have it in their, instead of fight, flight, freeze, or in addition to fight, flight, freeze, there's also film or WhatsApp, document, or there's something here that I'm starting to think about. And, you know, what kind of theories would explain what's going on here? Because this is something, you know, in my generation, it didn't exist. We didn't have the phone as part of our bodies. And a way you experience things, even extreme situations, through the phone and not just through your body. And so we're seeing this now as footage, as proof, as, you know, as last minute of people who are no longer with us. But I'm thinking about it as, you know, as an action that is instinctive action that is available to us. And what kind of action is this, and what does this mean? You know, are we changing as people? That technology has become such essential and such part of our bodies that even in times when we need to hide or save ourselves, we still have a space for documenting. And what does this mean?
That safety net of something that's comfortable, knowing that you can have one last voice note, one last video if somebody finds your phone, or, you know, that's very interesting, the instinctive aspect to it. I wonder, you know, for example, if we go back to 1939 to 1945, what that would mean if in World War II, if we had access, you know, to that cell phone, that video footage, the way we have it today. and what the public opinion would be of World War II, because what I've been seeing since October 7th is a lot of people taking or double downing on, Holocaust denial. And so the question is where would we be if this technology existed 100 years ago? And how would the narrative, especially the anti-Israel narrative, where would it live if we had that kind of instinctive ability, or I would say the safety net to turn to?
I think that technology is the product of its time. And it would be different times if there would be a different technology, because at the time, photography still mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And the way people really understood what happened in the Holocaust is when they let in journalists and they saw and reported the pictures, and then people realized.
Mm-hmm.
But look what happens now. I mean, you had journalists, you had institutions, credible institutions, they reported, people believed, there was no question there.
Mm-hmm.
But now that you have so many types of media and that you have that raw footage that every person is their own media outlet, so you have as many narratives, as many people as they are,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't talk about believing anymore. I mean, you get so much footage,
Mm-hmm.
and still people don't believe it happened,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is something that, imagine if this happened at the Holocaust, if there were so many media at the Holocaust, maybe then people wouldn't have believed that it's happening if this media was available.
Interesting, yeah.
The media is
you're
creating the conditions for how we judge.
I think journalistic
situations.
integrity has to be questioned, and I go back to for example, BBC. I go back to New York Times, and I look at these two very credible institutions, and I would say Israel is still defending itself for the fact that it's defending itself. And yet, Hamas can put out a piece of information and it spreads like wildfire. So journalistic integrity is a huge element. And so I guess that leads me into my next question is that, how does the spread of fake news, because we saw it live, it happened, these institutions actually retraced to a certain extent. How does this fake news and misinformation affect the public opinion and policy making in the context of this war?
One of the strategies that I think some outlets are using, and I would say sometimes you see Benjamin Netanyahu use it as well in different contexts. But this is something that you can use only when you have this rich information environment. You're saying one thing, it spreads like wildfire. And then when, it turns out to be not true or it was something wrong, then you apologize for it, you fix it. It's been said anymore. It's been said already.
The damage is
it
done.
Circulates. The damage is done, and sometimes it's a strategy. So something that you want to believe in or is more dramatic would spread, and you won't. There's so much information. Nobody gets back to the fact that it wasn't true. I mean, it's not as interesting enough to make it viral. The apology or taking it back or the fact that, sorry, it wasn't true. The fact itself, the dramatic fact itself is the nature of a meme, right? So this is how you would spread. It's easy to spread something that is misinformed and they say, sorry, no, I was wrong. Nobody cares about the I was wrong. It's already out there.
Yeah, it's I find it scary. I have to say, I find it tremendously scary, especially when we're living in a world, and I hate to say this, I say this with the most respect, but a world filled with bigots, and I'd like to see change, and I'd like to see change in journalistic integrity, and I'd also like to see some sort of, because I believe we have advanced so far in technology that to say it's not possible would be naive, but some way where we can tokenize and verify information even in real time. And one of the challenges that I know exist with mainstream media is, these outlets want to be first to market. And when you're talking about information, especially in a war where it's getting deployed by the second, by the minute, you give up that journalistic integrity to be first to market, but it has consequences. And from a legal standpoint, I just wonder what's going to happen in the next couple of years, what kind of class actions are going to come out. It's going to be interesting to see.
Well, first of all, perhaps there's no truth, but there is authenticity. And although it's constructed authenticity, it still works. I mean, the people who are doing the best hasbara right now are people who were not involved in it before, and they had international audiences for something else that they were doing, and suddenly they started talking about this, and people believed them because they were their favorite travel blogger or something like this. This is a real example. There's this travel blogger on YouTube that millions are listening to his explanations about Israel right now. So stuff like this might work for people. If you already trusted someone and you see him as authentic, as suddenly turning to speak about something that he cares about that happens right now, and you listen to them because you trusted them on a different issue. I've never seen in an argument online, somebody changing their mind in an argument. That never happens. But, sometimes you see those documentaries or self-documented people are saying, I used to be a terrorist and now I'm So how does that happen?
Far few in between.
Just by meeting other people physically, or maybe you can drop into a wormhole on YouTube when the algorithm shows you the other side all the time and you're being indoctrinated. I don't know. But I think it's the same mechanisms that give us, that depress you, that might give us hope.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's very interesting. I believe that we have three avenues. One of the avenues is, as you said, we have people in our own echo chamber. We have people who, no matter what we say or what we do, there will always be a but, an if, or and. They'll hate us. There's no convincing them. And then there's the movable middle. And that's where our energy needs to lie. There's no point in talking to, the choir, into our echo chamber. There's no point in talking to a wall who's never going to listen to you. It's the movable middle. And perhaps those are extreme cases that you're talking about, in which somebody goes from, like you said, a radical terrorist to, the flip side. And I think we saw, and excuse my arrogance, I don't remember his name, but he was the former son of a Hamas leader, and he spoke at the UN. And the question is, how did he go from one side to another? And so I guess it's unlocking that movable middle in people. What do you...
But just a second, I do want to add one thing, that it has value to talk to your echo chamber as well. One of my colleagues, Terry Senft, says, write to the people who agree with you, because it's a kind of support. It's creating support. It's letting other people know that there are more people who think like them, and it creates community, and it has a value as well.
Yeah, I guess from a convincing standpoint, it doesn't have as much value, but yeah, that makes total sense, because you're reinforcing the fact that you're not alone in your thought process, especially in a time where we're so outnumbered. I say we are so outnumbered. I'm talking about the pro-Israel camp is outnumbered to a scary disproportionate amount. How do you see the role of digital discourse evolving in conflict resolution and peace-building efforts here in the Middle East? And is it possible after October 7th to truly find some sort of peace in the region?
That's a big question. I mean, who knows? It's really, we live in times that the history is determined by such black swan events. It's really hard to look at the evolution of things and tell you what's going to happen. But I believe that everything is possible, because if something so horrific, unimaginable became possible, then something really good, unimaginably good, is possible too. I mean, who knows? But in terms of doing it through the web, through digital discourse, I think that the cards in digital discourse are at the hand of algorithms today. Less at the hands of people and more at the hands of algorithms. So I'm not sure that with using our own old discursive strategies, something is going to work. I still believe in people meeting face to face. And I think that when people know an Israeli or a Jew or some of them and meet them and talk with them, this is where complexity happens. I don't see such more complex discourses surviving on social media. Maybe, it depends on the platform. Like with TikTok, you have those few minutes that you say something very dramatic, but on YouTube and on podcasts, people are listening to 30 minutes and even an hour of somebody explaining something more deeply. It really depends. There's so much information out there. At the end, it's about your own personal agency. What do you fall into? What does the algorithm prime for you? What are you able to digest and if you're able to listen to longer content or watch longer content, you're better off than those few fast videos for sure.
To me, especially when it comes to this war and when it comes to such extreme conflicts, and we saw this during COVID-19, is that it almost feels like the app has to self-implode. I say the app, whether that's TikTok or X, because of the disparity, because of the hate that you see online. It almost feels that it's a self-imploding game, that there's no end. The only end is, for there either not to be an end or for, the apps to shut down, because it's a black hole in which the things I read, are sickening. I had somebody in Tel Aviv come meet me for supper the other night, and they were distraught. And I said, what are you distraught about? And he said to me, I can't keep reading what's online. So I said, there's one very simple answer. Get off. You're here. You're in Tel Aviv. You're alive. Yes, the city's not what its normal feel is. There's the aura in there that we're at war. But if you were reading all this stuff and it's going to psychologically destroy you to the point that like you physically look distraught, get off. What is your message to people in the diaspora who are, their only means is to look at the media? What is your message to, whether it's pro-Israel or Jews or anybody who's not anti-Israel?
Well, at the end, where you need to be is something that every person knows in their gut. Although it doesn't make sense, it won't make sense. People would think that it makes sense for you to go back home because it's safer. But we know that, in times of this rot, nowhere is really safer. And you just know where you need to be, I think. This is something that you need to know from inside where you need to be. Like, I know I have a double citizenship. I could be somewhere else as well. But I know I need to be here. And it's amazing how people adjust to things. We're this very adaptable animal. So, I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't run to technology so fast, post-humanism and everything. We haven't explored enough the abilities of this human creature. I mean, how adaptable we are, that we hear sirens every day and after 5 minutes we go back to the beach, right? Everything is possible. And sometimes, life here is even better than in living in fear in some outside place in which you feel that you may not belong. It's really, I think we will see much more Aliyah, actually,
I applied for Aliyah during this time, and they told me that it's surprising how much or what interest they have now in the application. So
it may seem horrible from the outside, but at the end of the day, when we're all together here, I feel safer, and I think it's better.
100%. I do too. My roommate came back after leaving. She's not Jewish, has no connection to Israel, just here for the international law program. And she said she couldn't bear sitting at home watching the news. And she got a lot of flack from her family. And now that she's back, she says, "Phew," there's like a sigh of relief, which is an insane thing. You didn't hear that with the Russian-Ukraine war. You didn't hear that in other conflict zones. So
it's paradoxical because when you're far away, your mind is in the media and actually living this horrible reality from afar, and you feel guilt that you're not part of it. But when you're here, you can actually disconnect a bit from it because you're already here. And you can go to a cafe or to the beach, right?
That's how I feel. Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I think we could talk for another hour. Unfortunately, we don't.
Has it been 30 minutes already?
Yeah, it seems so. We don't have that leisure. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And where can our viewers find you online?
Well, I mostly podcast and write in Hebrew, but absolutecarmel.com in one word. There's some English stuff as well.
Great. I appreciate the time. Thank you.